you?
Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Are you getting your teaching from like Kenneth Hagin and all those type of teachers, or are you reading it for yourself?
Kenneth Hagin.
To follow Balaam's advice and entice the Israelites to be unfaithful to the Lord in the Peor incident, so that the plague struck the Lord's people. Verse 17. Now kill all the boys and kill every woman who has slept with a man, but save for yourself every girl who has never slept with a man.
Okay, quick.
As a king. That's what you guys are debating. What I said was the founding documents defends the position and the authority of the executive and gives him powers that would liken him to a king. And this is outlined in Federalist 69. And I'll read you, give me a second, let me pull it up. Federalist 69. Federalist 69. The president is to be elected for 4 years. The king of Britain is a perpetual and hereditary prince. Again, making clear and consistent comparisons, as I said a minute ago, to the king of England. They're establishing that the executive position is that of a king, but they're putting protections and checks on his power to ensure that he does not become a king. But make no mistake about it, when they were designing Federalist 69, Federalist 70, I believe they going into Federalist 72, when they're establishing the authorities of a president, they weren't looking to a legislative body. They weren't looking to like a Roman form of parliamentary government. They were looking at a king, an emperor, if you will, and giving him powers that would allow him to effectuate his responsibilities swiftly and effectively to protect the interests of the Union. And all I'm saying is, you can't get away from that reality. I'm not saying that the Constitution or the founding members established a king. I said exactly the opposite. They gave him the powers of a king, but then checked those powers with two other co-equal branches of government and put limitations on those powers, such as term limits. That's what I said.
TC, this is
you
what
guys are debating straw man.
And I heard you. No. I heard what you said, but this is where we fundamentally agree. You read the same documents I read, and you read them, and you interpret, hey, we want him to have the powers of the king, but we don't want him to be a king. And all of the documents I quoted, and what has been said historically, and the other 10,000 documents that I could pull up, say, all the founding fathers say, we hate kings. We hate everything about it. We don't want anything in our country to be remotely close to a king. We want to establish the furthest thing from a monarchy that we possibly can. To the point that when George Washington actually took the oath of office to begin with, he didn't want to be the first president. Second of all, he felt so bad and had such an issue with the presidency in and of itself. When he actually took the oath of office, he whispered, and the crowd complained they couldn't hear him, simply because they had such an aversion to everything kingship as it is. You are drawing something out of a document that nothing in the documents that were written support. Because if you read their personal journals and you line them up with their personal diaries, line them up with what they said in public and their speeches, they hated everything and did not want anything to do with the kingship. And I'm sorry, sir, you're way off base on this. And you know what? If you're right, I'll agree with you, bro. But you're way off the left field.
They hated kings so much. He's coming from a certain type of teaching. He's coming from John Hagee and all those other, like Kenneth Hagin. I know it. He's one of those.
Give you an easy
evangelicals. He's one of those evangelicals.
Where did they establish him as the commander-in-chief of the military? Where did they derive that authority from?
Let's not go back into the religious thing.
It's not no religion.
Because that's where he's coming from.
I'm just talking to the leader. I'm just talking to the leader, TC. I'm telling them to drag it back into that. No, TC, I was talking to you, TC.
Because what I said was 100% clear. What I said was...
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to you.
Okay, but
what I was saying was...
saying I'm wrong.
But can I just say something?
Wrong. You don't have those authorities unless they got it from the likeness of a king. Again, the power of the pardon came from a king. They literally likened it to King George. The ability to pardon, okay? To grant reprieves, to establish treaties. The powers of a king, okay? The power to be the commander-in-chief. The power, they get those authorities from a king. Now, they check those authorities, like I said, they check those authorities, but they got it from a king. They're likening the executive to a king. They didn't want just a parliamentary form of government. They didn't want a pure democracy. They wanted something that was a blend between a monarchy and a republic, is what they wanted.
Yeah, that's not what they wanted. In fact,
I'm not trying to... Hold up. Let me just say this. TC, in no way, shape, or form am I trying to change your mind. I want you to believe in what you're comfortable. Everything that I stated was for the benefit of somebody who does not know the history and does not know the back end, so that they don't be misled. I am in no way trying to change your mind to convince you to think and follow this. Trust me, I know you are completely, to your dying day, going to believe what you believe, especially from your background and how you've been indoctrinated with the people that you deal with. I'm not trying to change that. It was, my diatribe was for the people in the goo that need to know how it's actually worked. That's all. So I'm not debating with you in that sense.
I appreciate the patronization. I appreciate the patronization. It's not lost on me that you're soft. The soft punch there is not lost on me. Go ahead.
You're comparing. You're saying that they took some of the monarch ideas and instilled them into the president, right? The pardons. That's probably the only unilateral power that the president has. They cannot unilaterally sign treaties. They can't even unilaterally declare war, even though he is the commander-in-chief. The president can't on his own declare war. He needs congressional approval for that, right? So what you're doing is you're saying that because a bicycle has wheels and a automobile has wheels, they were trying to make an automobile like a car. Like a bike. And that's just not true. Just because they have similarities does not mean they were trying to make one the other. They were so, again, to GA's point, if you read their personal writings, they hated kings. It's one reason why we have this, because they didn't like centralized power. It's one reason why we have these federalists versus states' rights people, right? Because in our country's DNA, they're so worried about concentrated power because they don't trust it. It's in our freaking DNA. But I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna continue on because GA makes a good point. We're not gonna be able to change your mind in this, and so I'm gonna leave it.
Yeah, there's no changing of the mind. Again, it's okay. Fine. Let me do what you're doing, right? Hey, folks, the founders resisted tyranny. TC is advocating for tyranny because TC is suggesting that the founders wanted a tyrannous executive.
That's not what I said.
So because he's given authorities like the pardon power that's not checked, that's the only example of how he could be a tyrannical executive. But TC is wrong. The founders actually resisted tyranny. Check your arrogance at the door. Again, you're debating a straw man. You're not debating any of my points. I've said it 3 times now, but you continue to do this as if you're winning some sort of argument. Nobody has made the argument that the founders established a king. The founders gave the executive king-like powers because they wanted a strong executive. They did not want a parliamentary system of government. said, that's the reason why we don't have a prime minister. You have a president. But you continue to go ahead and spin the narrative so you can get the applause from all of the biased people in this room because you're preaching the virtues of limited government and restrictions on the executive's power. I agree. There's no dissension. There's no debate. Founders did not want a king. Do you want a brownie, bro? Like, the fuck? I've said this now multiple times. But what I also said was, which you can't refute, is that the powers he was given in the likeness of the authority that a king would have. Such as the power to grant repeat use of pardons. Such as giving him the commander-in-chief role of the military. Such as the ability to enter into treaties. Yeah, this debate is done. I mean, it's not even a debate. It's just simply grandstanding by Mr.
And I'm not grandstanding you either. I didn't grandstand you know what I
Boy, that spirit of wanting to debate is gonna take you down, brother.
I know,
Like,
right?
all of this, you saying
I
all
made
of
the
that.
position, First Lady. They're the ones that trying to repeat what I said.
Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. The fact that you were caping for this particular thing and saying, well, it's like him being a king, goes back to my original question. And even though you don't think you sound like that, but you're making an argument for it to be. Knowingly or unknowingly, that's what you're doing. And people can't articulate that to you because they're just going to keep going back and forth with the points about what you're making. And I always tell people the devil's in the details, right? But let's get to the meat and potatoes. People are listening to what you're saying. People are trying to make sense of this, which then begins to create a vision of that possibly happening. And that there is how things manifest.
So let me say this, First Lady, and this is going to be the best example that I have to lend to this conversation. Look at the anti-federalists of the time that Federalist 69 and Federalist 70 was written. If you look at the reputations and the criticisms of the Federalist Papers, and you look at the written documentary evidence that exists, you'll find the very same people that were anti-Federalist Papers were making the same arguments that I'm making. Essentially suggesting, or I'm sorry, that Mr. is making and GA is making, because they argued that even Federalist Papers were giving too much power to the executive to make him a king. Again, you don't have to take my word for this. You guys can Google this. There were writings by anti-Federalists that criticized the Federalist Papers because they were saying that Hamilton, Madison, and the others essentially equated the executive to a king. That was their argument. They were saying, you give him too much authority. You give him too much power. You're making him a king. That's the best defense of anything I can say because it shows that in the context of history, even the people that were there when they were reading those documents, they had the same criticism, such power, and gave him kingship authorities. But I'm wrong. You guys keep telling me that the founders had no relationship between the executive and a king.
In a best case scenario, you make an argument of three founders, and there were more than three founders, and they were in the minority. Even if they were all in favor, they are in the minority.
Okay, so I read Federalist 69, and I read Hamilton's argument. What TC is talking about is what was called at the time elective monarchy, right? And Hamilton is reassuring people that his elective monarchy is unlike the monarchy in Britain. But TC is correct. He does equate it. What TC is not telling, or maybe he doesn't know, I don't know, is that his proposal, right, of elective monarchy was resoundingly rejected at the Constitutional Convention, right? When was it? 1787, right? He had almost no support for his idea of elective monarchy, I'm sorry. And other founding fathers did not share this idea. So, yes, Hamilton did propose elective monarchy. He got rejected.
Which is
That's
a more
fair.
detailed.
That's
Which is
fair.
Which is a
That's
more
fair.
detailed. But that's a more detailed example of what I said. I said even if they. I said
Oh,
even
no,
if
bro. I thought you weren't trying to debate, bro. I thought you weren't. Now you're telling me what you said.
I said
now
even
protest too much, man.
I said earlier. I said you're giving the opinion of 3 people, right? And I said there were what do we attribute? What, a dozen of the main characters as our founding fathers? I said, and the majority of them did not support that idea, the idea of a king. And then I said of the 50 plus delegates, the majority of them didn't. And I said, I reiterated, I said, even if all 3 of the Federalist Papers authors agreed with this idea, that was not the opinion of the majority. And you're asserting that it was.
TC, did you know that this proposal for elective monarchy was rejected at 1787?
I know that there were a lot of defenses of Alexander Hamilton's positions that were not adopted in the documents. Sorry, I didn't know you were speaking. Sorry. Yeah, I have to respond back to you guys later. I'm going.
Sorry. Are you withdrawing your position?
No, I'm not withdrawing my position at all. What I said was, I don't know how long you've been in the conversation, Emperor, but what I said was, we were talking about the king, and I think First Lady said, do you seek to be ruled by a king? And what I said was that the Constitution, Article 2 branch, gives powers to the president that are checked by limitations on those powers, as well as the other 2 branches of government that would liken him to a king. Doesn't give him the authority to be, but it's likened him to a king. And so the reason, and this goes back to us referencing King David in the scriptures, and somebody made this point about we're not in a theocracy. And I gave an example that God supported kings in the scriptures and gave widespread latitude for kings that even, transgressed the law and still resided with them and still supported them and still prop those kings up. I gave the example of King David. I gave the example of Pharaoh and some others in which God had a direct hand in directing their actions and their movements. That got down the rabbit hole to what we're talking about now, essentially equating the president to a king. And I said, as much as you guys don't like it, the president is the present day example of what a king would be.
And you still repeating this crap. Hey, CEO.
Can I?
Lord.
Hey. TC, you can equate in your personal opinions whatever you want to equate with, right? But historical record that you reference does not support what you're saying. So you can obviously have your personal opinion about King David and likening the president to King David. But the historical record that you presented, right, referencing Hamilton's idea that was rejected of elective monarchy for substantiation of your personal beliefs is historically incorrect because you didn't provide the full context, specifically that it was rejected.
Now, did you say this is in the Constitution?
It's Hamilton's idea of what he wanted. Like he had a vision of
an idea that wasn't adopted.
Yep.
So I don't understand why TC even used it as an example. You see how you play in our faces? That's what I be talking about.
So TC, wouldn't MBS and Saudi be much closer to being a modern day king than the president of the United States?
Yep.
He
didn't answer. That was me.
He's not going to answer. He's not going to answer CEO. And I think that Philip just wrapped up the conversation and put a stamp on it in the more words of Governor Morris, who was involved in writing a preamble for the Constitution. He said the magistrate is not the king. The king is the people. And that's the through line to all of the documentation that TC doesn't want to own up to, in that sense. He's trying to draw similar. So that's the standpoint, man. And the only thing I was saying to Virginia before is let's stay away from the religious conversation and let you actually understand, unless you're trained in hermeneutics and theology and you've been through dispensationalism. You have people, the stuff that I hear people quote and pull up, it's so far off base because it's just like our laws and documentations. When you take a smidgen of something, like Philip was saying, and you don't recognize the whole of it in the background of it, it's just a trash piece of a train wreck of a 32 Pilot car wreck on 94 in Grand Haven. It's bad. So let's just steer clear from that because 98% of what I hear on Clubhouse is wrong to some degree. Let's just stop doing that.
Yeah, I think it's more like a 26 car pileup to be exact.
Somewhere in between Flint and
But the idea is this a new mega point that's getting ready to come out and it's getting ready to start being discussed? Is this the idea we're playing around with this King situation? Is that
I
it?
think that's a TC.
Sorry.
This is old stuff. This is old stuff because the conservative, the evangelical conservatives, was claiming King Caesarea. That's mentioned in the Bible. They were doing that when he was running. When the 200 evangelical pastors got together and prayed over Donald Trump, they were claiming that historical reference before.
Yeah.
So that's what the King thing is. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's an old idea, but it's getting trotted out again in conservative circles. Like if you read their quote unquote philosophers, right? Like this Hamiltonian vision of Caesarism, which is a few steps away from Bonapartism and a few steps away from fascism, right? The idea of Hamiltonian Caesarism and unitary executive is very much revived for Trump. So yeah, they're talking about it. I don't think it's reaching very much the liberal circles because it's, it's just talking points that are dealt with.